Guys, my name is Adil Constantine. I am an independent musician producer. Today, we're starting our first video to our complete guide to music production using Ableton Live. And basically, I'm going to walk you from anywhere, how to get started, what gear you need, and how to set up your DAW, all the way into releasing your music and how to make money with it. So this course really is for every musician who would like to start recording their music and make them sound good, get them released onto the streaming platforms and start making money with their music. So in this course, I'm going to show you the gear that you need to get started with music production, how to install and set up your Ableton Live, and give you an overview of Ableton Live, all the different parts of it, and then the difference between audio and MIDI recording, composing and arranging your music, effects, how to use reverb and EQ and all that stuff, mixing and mastering, and how to release your music to multiple streaming platforms, and how to make money with the music that you make. Now, a prerequisite for this course is that you have a basic understanding of music theory. You know what melodies are, chords, scales, basic time signatures like 4/4, and obviously if you play an instrument or at least know the basics of how to play the piano, you should be good. This course is exactly for you. And as I said earlier, on this course, I'll be covering Ableton Live as my DAW. That's what we're going to be using. Now, if you have Ableton Live 10, 11, or 12, you should be good. Most of the stuff that I'm going to be covering are features that are available on all of these three. Now, if you're ready, let's go ahead and jump in with the first chapter, which is the gears that you're going to need to get started with music production. All right, now the first thing you're going to need is a computer. You need a computer to run your DAW and to plug in everything to. Now with this, I started with a used MacBook Pro from 2015 that had 8 gigabytes of RAM, and that would be my recommendation as the minimum RAM to get on the computer. 8 gigabytes, nothing less. Now, as far as the CPU, you're gonna need a little bit of a strong CPU. So on the Intel side, you're gonna need like a Core i5 processor or later. And on the AMD side, I'm not very familiar with AMD, but as long as it's a multi-core processor, you should be good. Like a quad core, that would be great. Now, the reason for that is because the CPU is going to be handling a lot of the audio processing. So especially when it comes to latency, I've seen a lot of people struggle with latency just because their CPU is struggling to basically process the audio fast enough so you don't have latency. And later on, I'll talk about buffer sizes and how the CPU usage affects that. Now, as far as storage, I highly recommend going with SSD. I would stay away from any hard drives, just because hard drives are mechanical, they break, they stop after a while, and they're not as fast as SSDs. Now, if you're limited on the SSD on your internal storage on your computer, you can always use an external SSD drive, and that's basically what I'm doing. I have a 256 internal storage, which I use for installing the software, the DAW, and the plugins. But then as far as the library and the library of those plugins and the audio samples, all of those are stored in an external SSD. That way they're fast, quick enough to read those, and there's no delay or hiccups while you're working on your DAW. Now, the next thing is we're going to need to get some MIDI controllers. Now, I'll explain a little bit more about how MIDI works later, but MIDI controllers are basically things like this keyboard and this Ableton push. They don't have sounds inside of them, but you use them to trigger sounds on your DAW using, like plugins and virtual instruments on your DAW. That's why they're called controllers. They're not like instruments. Obviously, if you have live instruments like guitars, that's great. But starting with the controllers, I would get something like the Akai MPK Mini. The only reason I say that, mostly because one, it's affordable. It's around $100. It might be cheaper nowadays. And it has a good combination of keys, pads, and knobs. Now you can also get the Arturia Mini Lab. I believe it's got also some sliders. But this will get you started totally fine. Now, as you get more into it, you might need a bigger keyboard, something like a 49, just to have more range of notes that you can compose with. But this alone would work, because also it's got like octaves, so you can change the octaves and basically will shift those keys into lower keys or higher, like lower notes or higher notes. Now, the next thing you're going to need is an audio interface, something like the Focusrite Scarlett right here. This one right here is also around $100 and might be cheaper. And this what will allow you is to connect microphone or an instrument, and basically it will take that signal and send it through USB into your computer. All what it's doing is taking an analog signal of the sound and converting it into digital, something that your DAW can record. Now, with these, there's plenty out there. You can do some research on what's the best ones. This is the one that I started with, and it still works after all these years. And it gives me all the essentials that I need as far as mic and an instrument. So I can plug in my mic and my guitar, and I'm set and good to go. Now, speaking of microphones, there are different types of microphones out there for different uses, but it really kind of comes down to two main types: a dynamic microphone and a condenser microphone. Now, a condenser microphone, you'll see a lot of vocalists, they use that because they're very sensitive and they capture a high range of frequencies. So, and it gives you a clearer, more detailed sound, but they require phantom power, which you got to make sure that your audio interface can provide that. And they're usually a little bit more expensive and they're more fragile. So that's condenser microphones. Now, dynamic microphones, on the other hand, like the SM7B, they're not as sensitive. They do a great job at just capturing the sound that's right in front of them. Like this one right here is a unidirectional mic, so anything that happens in the back, it doesn't capture it. And it doesn't, as far as the frequency range, it doesn't go as high and as wide as the condenser microphone. So a lot of the super high end frequencies is not going to capture that, or the super low is not going to capture that. It gives you a nice little right in the middle, which is what makes it a little bit more versatile, that you can use it for vocal recording, instrument recording, podcasting, live streaming, and stuff like that. Now, with the dynamic microphones, though, they don't require phantom power. And just to show you, like on this Scarlett Solo right here, that button right there that shows 48 volts, that is the phantom power. So if you plug in a condenser mic in here, you have to push this button to provide it power in order for it to work. Now, as far as mic recommendations, it really depends on the application that you're going to be using it for. If you're trying to record vocals at a high quality and capturing that wide range, then definitely go with a condenser mic. But you gotta make sure that with a condenser mic, because it captures so much detail, that your room is treated. So you have some soundproofing in your room, so when you record, your vocals and your sound is not bouncing around and it just is dampening the sound, so it's only capturing your vocals. This one right here, dynamic, it's more versatile, and I don't have to worry so much about the room being treated. I can record vocals just like this. And again, like I said, it's versatile, and later on, as we talk more about creating content for social media, this comes in handy for streaming and making videos and all that stuff. This one right here is about $400, which is kind of pricey, but Shure also makes the Shure MV7 and MV7X, which they range about half the cost, around $200. There's plenty out there. I'm just a big fan of Shure microphones, not sponsored. I just like them. They sound great and they're very reliable. Now, the last item on the hardware side is going to be a way for you to listen to your music and to your mix. And with that, you have two options. You can go with studio monitor headphones or speakers. Now, for the headphones, I'm using Audio-Technica ATH M50X. This is a great one. It's kind of worn out. I've had it for years, but it sounds great. It's really good quality headphones, and it has a good sound and very comfortable on the ears. Also, if you want to invest more in speakers, then I would recommend something like the PreSonus Aries 3.5. They don't take a lot of space. They sound great. It gives you a nice flat signal. Just make sure to avoid any kind of headphones or speakers that are like boosting the bass or anything like that. You need the signal to be as flat as possible, so that way you know exactly what your tracks sound like, so you can make the adjustment in the DAW to make it sound good. Now, on the software side of things, you're going to need, obviously, first your DAW. I keep saying DAW, but in case you don't know, it stands for Digital Audio Workstation. There's plenty out there, and most of the stuff that we're going to do here kind of apply to the other DAWs as well. Just the techniques and obviously the features on the software itself are going to be different a little bit. So, but for Ableton Live, you can get the intro, the standard, or the studio. If you can afford the standard or studio, that's great. Honestly, I feel like the sweet spot is the standard. When I got that, I felt like I got everything that I need. I only upgraded to studio later on because they had a really good sale and it just made sense to kind of give it a try. Now, keep in mind, the way that I started is I used the free version of Ableton, which is Ableton Lite, that came with my Focusrite. A lot of the hardware that I mentioned earlier, like the Focusrite or the Akai MPK Mini and other MIDI controllers, they usually come with a light version of different DAWs, including Ableton Lite. So start with that. It's going to have limitations as far as like the number of tracks and all that, but it will get you started and get you going, at least understanding how the software works. And from there, you can decide if you want to continue on with Ableton or maybe switch to something else. Now, your DAW is going to come with its own list of plugins and virtual instruments and audio samples, and those are all great. I always recommend like using these, especially when it comes to effects, because they're more optimized, they run better and lighter on your machine. But a lot of times there are some like these third-party plugins that just look better, not necessarily look better, but they provide features that are missing in the native plugins. Now, the first one that I highly recommend is the Komplete Start from Native Instruments. One, it's free and it comes with everything you need from effects to virtual instruments and audio samples. Effects like Ozone EQ or even ROM reverb, which those two I use a lot, and very cool virtual instruments like Ethereal Earth, Analog Dreams, Irish Harp, and many more. Now, the second one that I recommend is if you go to Spitfire Audio and check out their Labs collection. Everything in the Labs is absolutely free, and they have some amazing sounding virtual instruments on there. The soft piano is one of my favorite go-to piano sounds that when I'm composing, and there's also a lot of different instruments like the guitar, violins, and orchestra, strings, and all that stuff. All of it for free. So make sure to check out the Spitfire Audio Labs. Now, you're also going to need a synth. I think everybody should understand at least how synths work. Now, one of the most like easy to learn synthesis on, I would say, is Serum. It's a very popular synth plugin. It was really easy for me to understand how the envelopes work and all that stuff. And if you can't buy it right off the bat, like by itself, if you subscribe to Splice for all the audio samples and all that stuff, you can actually buy Serum from there on monthly payments. I believe it was like $10 a month, but you get access to Serum right away. But before you go there, make sure to go and check out Vital from Vital Audio. It's a great synthesizer and it's absolutely free. It's got some really great presets and you can still learn, like I said, everything that I mentioned about synthesis on there. It's got the envelopes, you can tinker around, and if you need to later on switch to Serum, you can, but honestly, I was very impressed with Vital. I highly recommend it to a lot of my friends that are getting started with music production. And lastly, if you want some audio samples, like you can use Splice, like I mentioned. It's a good subscription, or you can check out Loopcloud. They also have their own. Honestly, if you just search online, there's so many different sources. There's a lot of music producers that make their own samples. I have my own Latin guitar sample pack that I make sure to link it up. And yeah, or even better, use your mic and go and record things around you, whether it's like kitchen utensils or drumming on random things like cans or desks. Make your own sample, because you're honestly going to feel so much better and you're going to be more proud about your composition, knowing that you have unique sounds that you recorded and included in your music. So this wraps up the first video of this course. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell to get notified of future videos, especially videos for this course. I'm gonna put this course on here on YouTube because I'm just trying to give back to the community, teach everything that I know, and help everyone out there. And if you have any tips that you can share or like some product recommendations, make sure to put them in the comments below. Until next time, keep making music.